Today, I will not explain the project itself, but I will talk about some of the implications of that project. And for those for whom this is of interest, and I should think that would be most of you, if not all, then we do conduct a regular briefing every Tuesday, and we can get in touch and follow that. So today, I will really talk about some of the implications or purpose of what ONDC plans to do. In a very simple way, think about it like the UPI of e-commerce, which is the goal is to enable anybody and everyone who has anything to buy or sell to be able to interact with the other party. We live in a world where, first of all commercial activity takes place inside closed platforms. So if you want to order restaurant food, there's one set of applications. If you want to book a taxi, there's another set of applications. If you want to order things home, there's another set of applications. So we have specialized platforms. Both the seller and buyer have to be in that platform, otherwise interaction does not take place. But we also live in other worlds where there is complete interoperability. So the financial world has complete interoperability. You and I don't have to have an account with the same bank or even need to use the same payment application to be able to send money to each other. And so that's an open system, whereas in commerce, we are in a closed system. So let me talk about the implications. As I said, it'll take much longer than we have today to explain the entire system. But let me explain some of the implications of what ONDC will bring. Can we move to the next slide? Or I continue for it. Okay. So democratization. All the platforms that I mentioned, or all these spheres that I mentioned, the behavior that tends to take place is there is a battle for scale. Entities enter those spheres of operation. They spend a lot of money, time, effort, build technology, and the entire goal is towards building scale. And when they have built scale, that effectively becomes a barrier for anybody else to participate. So look at any sphere, whether it is food ordering, taxis, home products, travel, you would typically find in each of these spheres 2, 3, maximum 4 applications of any size or scale. And after that, it's really a non-existent tail. Now, because of this, 2 things happen. One is that somebody else cannot create a different model, a different structure that can compete with these, because this has become a barrier for entry. And even for participants on this network, if you're a relatively small player dealing with a large marketplace or platform, you do not have equal bargaining power. So one of the implications of ONDC is going to be democratization, where scale is not limited to a few players, but scale is available to everyone. This is a very, very radical notion, because we are used to scale being available to people who have invested a lot of time, effort, and importantly, money to build that. Now, how does scale become available to everyone? Think about the internet itself. Think about if you're publishing a website. You publish that website on a web hosting platform. Who will be able to see it? The entire universe of people who are on the internet, regardless of which country they are in, which browser they are using. They are able to see your website. There is no control. Nobody controls access of your website to any internet browsing person, right? It's not that your web server has to go and register on a particular browser to be able to be visible. So that's an example where you don't have to use the world's largest or most popular browser. You don't have to publish your website on the world's largest hosting platform. Even if you host it on the most smallest platform, you're equally visible. So the idea of democratization is like the internet, where regardless of whether you're a buyer or a seller, you have access to the entire universe on the other side, and it is available to everyone. There is no barrier to entry from a scale access standpoint. The next notion is scale itself. Now, when we think about scale, we don't think about scale in a few millions, right? We are a country of 1 billion, and so when the ONDC project thinks about scale, we think at population scale. And all parts of the public good digital infrastructure that is getting built is with that scale in mind. So we are used to it, right? We are used to biometric identity at population scale through Aadhaar, which we know has now enabled many other things. One of the things Aadhaar was able to enable was banking access, right? So earlier, a few decades ago, if you had to open a bank account, you had to have somebody introducing you, and only then you could open a bank account. Now with Aadhaar, you had your own identity, you can open a bank account. And so India has broken the curve of GDP to banking penetration ratio. Once banking was available, UPI could become possible, right? So digital payments, which went from a few 100 million to 7 billion a month. So when we talk about scale, we talk about scale of the order of population scale. We're not talking about some pockets, we're not talking about urban-centric. Today, e-commerce is largely an urban-centric phenomenon. Less than 10% of the commercial activity is taking place in some digital form or the other. And most of it is urban-centric. So from an India perspective, e-commerce is very, very niche today. So when ONDC project thinks about scale, we are thinking population scale. Then the idea of unified. I mentioned that today we do different things on different platforms. Think about when you're going on a holiday. So when you're going on a holiday, maybe you're buying some stuff to take along. You'll probably do that on one platform. You'll book your flight ticket or your train ticket on another platform. You'll book your hotel on a third platform. To get to the train station or the airport, you'll book your taxi on a fourth platform. If you want some tourist services, you might do an internet search and find them. So for one activity, one action, you're going through 5 different experiences, 5 different platforms, 5 different journeys, and 5 different checkouts. Why should that even be necessary? Now we are getting used to the idea where new services are available on existing platforms, right? So with UPI, now you have payment tools available on an e-commerce platform. You have a payment tool available in your messaging application. So this now, what used to be a pure messaging tool, now allows you to make payments as well. So capability of application starts to expand and encompass services. And so the day is not far away when you're going on a holiday where you can buy your suitcases, your flight ticket, book your hotel room, book your taxi and your tourist services all through a single cart action, add to cart, checkout, and you're done. So the opportunity for creating unified experiences to create on-the-fly bundles. So nobody has to pre-package a bundle and sell you this, 5 days, 3 nights, or 5 days, 4-night kind of holiday package with components. You can choose to assemble it, add to cart, check out, and you'll be able to do it. So the opportunity to create newer, innovative, unified experiences where as a user, you only need to be familiar with one interface. How do I create my profile? Where do I store my payment information? How do I do search? Where do I find customer support? And through that one interface, I can do all the activities that I'm interested in. Unbundling. This is a very, very key design principle that makes all of this possible. Now, again, unbundling is something we are very familiar in other parts of our lives. We almost take it for granted. But when it comes to e-commerce, our expectation is that one entity must put all of this together. And we almost believe that unless one entity puts it together, we cannot have a seamless and a good experience. Now just think about the entire business process outsourcing industry. Why has it come into existence? It has come into existence because companies have now realized that there are many processes that are probably better and more efficiently and effectively done by somebody who's sitting outside the company who's a specialist in that area. So let's just take payroll. When I started my career, payroll was done by the HR team with the help of what was then called the EDP department. Now payroll is outsourced, right? So now you have an employer as one entity. You have a process outsourced company that's handling payroll as a second entity. You have a bank where my account is as a third entity. I'm the employee, fourth entity. 4 entities, but do I have a problem receiving my salary? Absolutely not. Think about automobiles. I know of no major car manufacturer that makes its own tires. Does that mean we have a bumpy ride? No, we don't. So the fact that things are unbundled does not automatically lead to a bad experience. So the assumption that because we are used to e-commerce in a totally bundled and packaged form, that moment we go unbundle, things will fall apart is absolutely unfounded in our own experiences. But what does unbundling do? When you unbundle, you allow different entities to do different parts, and you allow a lot more innovation to take place. Right? So now if you just take e-commerce and simplify it to just 3 levels of activities, there is one kind of activity which is buyer-facing, where buyers are searching for products, adding to cart, checking out. That's the buyer-facing activity. Then there is the seller-facing activity, right? Uploading of catalogs, updating your inventory, accepting orders, modifying orders like a return or a cancellation. That's the seller-side activity. And the third, where there is a physical good involved, there is a physical movement of goods between the seller's pickup location to the buyer's delivery location. Now, if you just take these three activities, groups of activities, why should one entity have to do all the parts? Right? So you can have one entity doing only buyer-side activity, another entity doing only seller-side activity, a third entity doing delivery activities. But if you provide a seamless protocol by which they can connect, you will recreate the same experience and allow much more freedom. Now, what does this do? Think about lots of organizations that have a user base that can become buyers. They don't have any sellers. They don't have any logistics applications. Just look at the 3 telecom providers in this country. Between the 3 of them, they have more than 1 billion users. Now, if those 3 bring that user base to the ONDC network, and they will, in fact, one of them has just finished signing their contract, then you have 1 billion buyers on the network. That is several times larger than any e-commerce platform today. Okay, that's what unbundling does. Now, can they set up an entire e-commerce platform? They probably can't, right? And it will be too much of a distraction from their core business. But they have a user base, they have digital capability, they can bring those billion buyers to the network. Similarly, banks, similarly, social media companies, similarly, any community. Right? There are lots of communities that have existed on the internet and on social media. Each of those communities can bring that user base and make that a buyer application. Media companies can do it. So you'll have many companies bringing buyers to the network. Similarly, many other companies can bring sellers to the network. One example are companies that do point-of-sale software. So you're building a software that a standalone store can do their billing on. A customer walks in and you can do that billing. Now that software has complete access to your catalog. Software has complete access to your inventory. That's why you can do the billing. Moment that software is connected to ONDC, any shopper on the network can now see your store's catalog and inventory and be able to order from you. So now you have a software company that has started connecting sellers to the network. So in this fashion, many more organizations can become part of e-commerce by contributing the components, and like a jigsaw puzzle, all the parts will come together to complete the picture. So unbundling is going to be a very, very powerful force that will unleash a capability of building innovation and therefore penetration. Focus. For anybody to be part of e-commerce invariably requires, as I said, putting together all components, right? Now, in an unbundled world, organizations can now focus on their source of strength. So going back to my automobile example, a tire manufacturer can just simply focus on building the best possible tires for bicycles, for cars, for trucks, or for whatever, but you become an expert in that. And because you're an expert in that, you become better and better, and that really becomes how you succeed, right? Tire makers don't think, oh, I don't have enough demand, let me start designing my own car. Nobody thinks in that fashion. But in e-commerce today, anybody who wants to enter starts building a platform. So you have the big commercial platforms I spoke of. Government builds its own platform. So you have, Enam and GEM and platforms of that nature. Everybody starts to build their own platform and starts to put together components. Now, many governments, for example, have an interest in promoting, understandably, local production. So whether it is farm production, whether it is factory production, whether it is handicraft production. And so it makes sense for them to bring together all these producers, creators, and sellers and connect them to buyers. But our government's expert in marketing, our government's expert in building a user base, they're not, right? So when they start doing that, they're now venturing into a territory where they're not experts. Similarly, you have organizations that are very, very consumer-oriented, who do not have necessarily a bank of sellers to go with. Should they now put feet on the street, build infrastructure, and start sending those people out and incur those costs of bringing on those sellers? Well, that's how e-commerce has been today. And so you have many companies who try to do all the parts. They build those cost structures, and then they struggle to make money, and they also now start expecting commission or other forms of financial support in order to become profitable. But when you allow unbundling, you allow organizations to focus, and just by focusing on the part that you do really well, you can now get the benefit of e-commerce without building the entire chain. So let me just give one illustrative example. Imagine you're a software company that's a specialist in image processing, right? That's all you are. So you could be creating various image processing solutions. You could be providing solutions to healthcare industry, right? So automatically scan X-rays and provide an initial solution. Or you could be scanning weather maps and providing a weather forecast. So you're basically an image processing company. Now, think about all the hand-cart vegetable vendors, the thela-walas. You can create a very simple tool where the thela-wala can aim his camera at his thela. The image processing software can identify, okay, what's potato, brinjal, cauliflower. Not only identify that, render it in 25 Indian languages, and the moment the person enters his 40 rupees a kilo or 60 rupees a kilo, his catalog is ready. And if you decide that your charging model is, let's say, only 0.1% of each transaction, a vendor will not mind parting out of every 100 rupee order, parting with 10 paisa to get that extra order, right? So suddenly, as an image processing company, you're still doing only image processing. You're not building an entire e-commerce value chain, but you've created a tool by which you can start earning revenue. And so be focused, play to your strengths, and still be able to earn instead of having to do everything. That leads to efficiency, because if you focus on what you're good at, then you become efficient at it, and you become both simultaneously a quality and a cost leader. Right? That's what has happened with the BPO industry. They are best at those services, and they're also efficient at those services. So any company that tries to now bring those services inside will neither be as good nor be as cost efficient. So automatically, all the thoughts we've spoken of lead to being business efficient, which then leads to profitability, because e-commerce today as an industry is replete with people creating very innovative models, things that we believe should work, but struggle with profitability. Why? Because they're building everything on top and not leveraging existing infrastructure. So when you bring everything on top, that's all additional cost structure and all has to be paid for, and that becomes difficult to justify profitably. Then let's talk about adjacency. Right? We are familiar with a world where the order of business changes. So a few decades ago, think about mobile phones and their operating systems. And which is the leading mobile operating system today? A company that didn't even have mobile phones. So where will the next competitor in the field come from? We do not know. But the opportunity was restricted when everything was operating as a private sector, complete platform way of doing business. Moment you go unbundle and open network and you allow for this opportunity, Who knows where the next leading player will come from? So I talked about the telecom companies, right? You could have the largest buyer universe not coming from an e-commerce platform, not from a household product company or a taxi company or a food delivery company. It could actually be a telecom player that becomes the largest e-com buyer network in the country. Similarly on the seller side. So where will the next e-commerce scale opportunity come from? It may not be any of the existing players. It may come from an adjacency that we can't predict. What we can predict is that there will be adjacent players who we can't think of today and who will play a part in e-commerce in the times to come. Interoperability. Interoperability is the notion that different entities can now work with each other and create solutions. And that requires a protocol. So that's what ONDC has built. We've built our own protocol that allows businesses that today may not think of working with each other or may not even be able to conceive of a solution to be able to now partner with each other. So we have companies, for example, that give student loans, right? Now, if you're giving student loans, then you need students and you need institutes where they're taking courses. So now, if you have to provide that, you have to accumulate a bunch of institutes that you can bring together, and you also have to bring a bunch of students to bring together. But what if you could just simply plug into a network that already had institutes with courses, and you already had students who were there for other purposes? If there is interoperability, moment you make your solution available, then you're becoming part of the chain where your business can grow, right? So think about what happens with payment tools today. So when we shop online and we come to checkout, suddenly we start getting messages that, okay, so-and-so payment tool is offering cashback, or so-and-so payment tool will offer interest-free EMI. What have they done? They're simply being a participant of that overall chain and plug themselves in. Now, today they have to integrate uniquely, right? So today they have to go to that platform, have a conversation, understand their APIs and integrate, and only then they can become part of it. So if you have N platforms on one side and M platforms on the other side, you have N into M, that many number of interactions and integrations to do. But if everybody joins the network, then you have total across the industry only N plus M, right? So all N join from one side, all M join from other side, and that's a far fewer set of interactions. And more importantly, each organization needs to integrate only once with the network. You don't have to separately integrate with every entity. So interoperability allows an efficient access to scale. So we spoke about democratization and scale. Interoperability allows through a single integration access to that scale. Again, we are used to the notion of a single connection, right? Our laptops connect to one Wi-Fi point. We don't connect to 100 Wi-Fi points to access the entire internet universe. When we turn our mobile phone on, our mobile phone connects to one tower. Our mobile phone does not need to connect with one tower of every mobile company in the world. So we are used to the idea that we just need a single connection, a single point of entry, and the entire universe is available to us, except that those universes are available to us in banking, in telecom, on internet, or other spheres, not today available in e-commerce. But with interoperability, that now becomes an opportunity even in e-commerce through ONDC. And finally, portability. There are many services and strengths today that need to be portable and are not. They're locked inside a platform. One very, very important factor is reputation. So how does e-commerce achieve scale? E-commerce achieves scale when consumers buy from sellers they didn't know existed, right? You search for a product, you get served a whole bunch of sellers and you don't know any of them. But why do you place trust? You don't place trust because on the platform you're on. Even if it is a very well-known platform that you've been shopping on for several years, if you find a seller who has only a 2 on 5 rating, you'll probably still not buy. So reputation and quality of that reputation is very, very important for you to feel comfortable buying from a completely unknown seller. Now, whose reputation is it? It's not the reputation of the platform, it's the reputation of the seller. So the seller has built this reputation, the seller has provided a certain quality of service, they have built this reputation, but when that seller has to join another platform to expand the reach of consumers they want to get access to, they start from zero. So today I'm on platform 1, I build a good reputation. When I join a second platform, I start from zero. Why should that be, right? It's my reputation, that's not available. Now on ONDC, the reputation is an asset of the seller. It now belongs to the seller. It does not belong to the platform through which you are linked. So if the seller chooses to move to a different seller application to connect to the network, the reputation stays with them. And the reputation will work at multiple levels. So the overall entity will have a reputation, the sub-entity will also have a reputation. So if let's say you're an educational institute has a reputation, even an individual teacher has a reputation. Or a salon has a reputation, a stylist has a reputation. Or a delivery company has a reputation, a delivery agent also has a reputation. So if a teacher leaves one institute and joins another institute, they don't start from zero. They can port their reputation with it. So portability of strength, portability of assets becomes a very, very powerful idea that compels people to do the right thing. Right? So when everything is locked and forced, then different behaviors come by. But if you know it's going to be a permanent asset, then that leads to much more productive and sustainable behavior. Brands. We think of brands as names that come from companies and manufacturers that have a certain promise. But once you have an open network, anybody can become a brand. Individuals can become a brand. So you can think about, right, when you go to exhibitions where you see embroidered garments, and a particular outlet might call out somebody and say, oh, so-and-so person did that actual embroidery. And then you buy that product and you've forgotten, right? And you don't even know. Or when you go to your neighborhood fruit or vegetable vendor, they might tell you that, okay, these apples have come from Himachal or these mangoes have come from Ratnagiri, and you'll just have to take their word for it. You do not know the source. You do not know where your jaggery came from. You do not know where your vegetables came from. But on ONDC, because now everybody, all sellers and all buyers can see each other, even each farmer can become a brand. So you can, if you, let's say, pass by a farm on the way somewhere, you stop by, you enjoyed great oranges, you can go back and order from that farm, and you can even order from a specific orchard of that farm. So farmers can become brands. People who are doing home creation of any kind, whether you're a tutor or you're a home baker, those can become brands. So everybody who is now a creator has the opportunity to become a brand and become somebody in their own right as a differentiated entity, not as a mass commoditized contribution to an e-commerce network. So those, I thought, were kind of 10 salient thoughts as to what does an open network enable, what sort of capabilities, features, benefits it will make possible. It's not possible in a short talk like this to explain exactly how ONDC work, and I encourage all of you to reach out to us at team@ondc.org. Write to us, we'll invite you to a briefing and we'll walk you through more in detail. But hopefully this gives you a semblance of a completely new way that e-commerce will take shape. This is the only place in the world where it is taking place. Nowhere in the world is anybody looking at an open network. And there are two reasons why this is the place where it is just starting. It's starting here, firstly, because the trigger was the pandemic 2.5 years ago, when India, like many other countries, was looking to control the flow of pandemic by locking down the population. It automatically triggered the question that how will people access their necessities? How will people access their food? How will people access their medicine? And so that's when the requirement was born that can we create a UPI of e-commerce where anybody can buy from anywhere without having to have physical interaction. The second reason why it took place here is because by then India had already demonstrated capability of building digital infrastructure at population scale. So Aadhaar, Coven, UPI, all these had already been implemented, had already been successful, had already been seen to lead to more innovation. And so the context of having succeeded with digital infrastructure and the trigger of requiring a universal interface for commerce is what triggered the need here. Will this remain confined to India? Probably not. So we have many handicraft manufacturers today who say that, people who buy our products are actually not from India. Right? So you have saffron growers in Kashmir who say more than half our production is sold outside, or Pashmina shawl makers. Now, what will happen is that buyers outside, through an ONDC buyer application, can buy from a seller in India. Similarly, one day a seller outside can sell to a buyer in India, because all that is needed is an ONDC compatible application using the same protocol, an international mode of payment, an international delivery system. We already have international logistics partners who are working to embed with us, and very soon we'll have international payment tools as well, so that will become possible. So if you have a buyer outside and a seller outside on an ONDC application respectively, that buyer and seller can also buy and sell from each other. And so who knows, this protocol may eventually become global. So it's starting in India, but has the capability of becoming a global protocol. And we certainly know from all of the spheres that globally there's only one protocol. So for internet, there is only one HTTP protocol worldwide. Each country doesn't have their own. For email, there is only one protocol, SMTP protocol worldwide. Each country doesn't have their own. So when this becomes successful, I don't think it should surprise any one of us that this is not remaining an India-only thing, but potentially a global open network for e-commerce. So thank you for your attention, and I look forward to engaging with you more deeply in times to come.